It's not that often you find a bourbon cream that is kosher certified, nor for that matter, a kosher certified bourbon that was aged in Israeli wine barrels made right here in America. Well, that's something we're going to discuss on this episode of The Jewish Drinking Show, bringing L'chaim to life. L'chaim. So we're at Boone County. Josh Quinn, what can you tell us about yourself? Obviously, we're here at Boone County. Your role as a co-founder, co-owner.
Yeah, well, Rabbi Drew, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Absolutely.
It's great to be here. Hello to everybody that's out there. My name's Josh Quinn. I'm one of the co-founders of the Boone County Distilling Company.
Yeah.
And the question is how did I get here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really just a dream between two guys that didn't come from the whiskey business. And I'm very fortunate. My business partner, Jack Wells, is an entrepreneur. And he's been in the coal business for 30 years, and I'm a retired law enforcement officer. And for your viewers, what they might find a little fun factoid about me is I worked for the FBI in the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and I investigated issues of foreign and domestic terrorism.
Wow.
It's obviously important in our world today.
Yes, ever present. All right, so how did you get this going? Because this did not, I mean, we can see up here, this did not just come about in the last decade. There was a previous existence, but you, with your business partner, so it says 2015. So is that when the business relaunched? You picked it up?
October 3rd of 2015 is when we distilled our first drop of whiskey. But the actual idea started about 2013. So my business partner and I, like all great ideas, we were in his basement. And it was a cold February evening. It was raining outside. And a commercial for moonshiners comes on. And bourbon was on at the uptick. And he looks at the commercial, and this is what entrepreneurs do. They're a little bit like cowboys. He said, let's build a distillery. How hard can it be?
Nice. So a whole decade ago. So probably permitting and other stuff to get until you distill that first drop 8 years ago. It also goes back to 90 years ago, 1833. So how long was that in existence, and how did you pick up that or renew this place?
Yeah, great question. So whenever you want to build a distillery, you have to ask yourself a couple questions. Number one, what are we going to make? Are we going to make whiskey? Are we going to make moonshine? You know, what do we want to do? We determined very early on we wanted to make whiskey. We didn't want to be in the moonshine business. We're whiskey people.
Still have one here though.
that is whiskey distilled from bourbon mash. So that is just new make right out of the still. That is bourbon before it hits the barrel.
Okay.
So you can call it moonshine or white dog or what have you, but the official name is whiskey distilled from bourbon mash.
Right? That's like the trade term or whatever.
That's a trade term. So how do we find, then you come with an identity crisis. What are you going to call yourselves? Is it going to be, Josh's Distillery, Rabbi Drew's Distillery, which would be, we could have a great name there. I think there's something to be worked on there. But what do you call yourselves? So you do what everybody else does, is you get on the internet and you start Googling. And you try to find a history and see what happens. So in Boone County, Kentucky, where we're at today, there's a little known history that nobody, and I've lived here a long time, nobody in this community knew about the history. So there was an 18-page white paper written by a person by the name of Matt Becker with the Boone County Historical Society. He's a friend of mine. And I read it, and I was enthralled that a distillery existed in 1833 all the way to about 1900 on the banks of the Ohio River in Petersburg, Kentucky. And I called my friend Matt and said, do you think I can use this as a business idea? And he said, go for it. So that's where we get the basic story, and it's a real history.
So it was not here in Boone County, it was up by Indiana?
No, it's here. It's in Boone County. So Petersburg, Kentucky is probably 9 miles west in a straight line from us, but it is in Boone County, right on the Ohio River. Lawrenceburg, Indiana is about 1.5 miles or 2 miles up the river.
Okay. So it closed down in 1900? It wasn't before Prohibition?
Correct.
Oh, wow. And then how'd you go about renewing the name, or was the name just fell in disuse and you were able to just pick it up?
Yeah, great question. So whenever you get into the whiskey business and you start using names, you can pick names, but then you have to hire an attorney, and then you have to go through the intellectual property process to figure out if somebody else is already using that in the intellectual property space in your industry. So for Boone County, yes, we did run into one issue when it came to trademarking the name, but we're since past that. Boone County Distilling Company is a trademark name. That's ours now.
Were you able to pick up their DSP?
No, the TTB allowed old DSPs to be renewed, and they stopped that practice, 10, 15 years ago.
Oh, you just missed it. Okay.
Yeah, I missed it.
So in the 8 years you've been you started distilling, when did you first come to market with unless you came with moonshine or some white products.
Yeah, great question. So when you get into the whiskey business, I mean, if you look at this beautiful facility, you know, it has bills. There's a mortgage that comes with it. There's electricity bills. There's all utilities. There's employees, and you have to pay for them somehow. So you have zero cash flow from day one. So how do you get cash flow? Well, unfortunately, you have to buy whiskey from somebody else because nobody, albeit it's good, but when is the last time you ever went to a bar and ordered a moonshine cocktail? Probably never.
Right.
You're going to buy this product when you're in the distillery, and that's probably it. People want to buy the matured and aged product. So you have to go on the market and find that, which we did. And we found 500, we actually found 1,000 barrels, but we only bought 500 of those. We regret that now. The 500 barrels were stored over in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, and they were made by the old Seagram's facility before LDI owned it, before MGP.
Oh, wow.
So it was the old Seagram's facility.
Yeah. Huh. And when did you start making clear spirits? I see you've got gin. Do you ever make a vodka?
No, and not a vodka is a pretty expensive process.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
More expensive than gin?
Yeah, because you have so much waste. You have to distill to 190 proof to get the vodka to become a grain neutral spirit, and you proof it down from there. And unfortunately, our pot still, our 500-gallon copper pot still from Vendome Brass and Copper Works can't do that. We could distill it 100 times, and we could never get it up to 100 or 190 proof. Wow. So we don't have the equipment to do it.
I know you were mentioning before we started recording, gin, spring 2020, I see this bottling in 2019. Have you discontinued, or are you just, it's not your interest?
It's discontinued for the moment.
Okay.
It's a time consuming and is a messy process, and the distillers enjoyed doing it.
Oh yeah.
But they didn't enjoy cleaning up the still afterwards. and quite frankly, that's not our bread and butter. You know, again, we're going to come back. We're whiskey people. As I said before, we experimented with gin because it sounded fun, but all gins are different. It's hard to replicate the recipe. And back to it again, we're whiskey people. So the gin, maybe one day we'll do it again, but our focus is on the aged whiskey product.
And what are your big drivers? Like, what have been the most popular products?
Most popular product, I think, without question, would be Bourbon Cream.
Oh, wow.
Which is kosher. Certified by the OU. In fact, your neighbor, Rabbi Yosef Levy, I don't know if you know Rabbi Levy.
Not yet.
Not yet, but Rabbi Levy is just up the road. That is our inspector for the OU in this facility.
Oh, neat.
The Bourbon Cream probably outsells everything 3-to-1.
Oh, wow.
And then I would say after that, then you jump into any single barrel product. If it's at barrel strength, catch strength, and then you jump into the barrel finished products. As an example, you might have a 6-year-old bourbon finished in a toasted cask, or a 6-year-old bourbon finished in a Amburana cask, or we'll talk about later, a Dalton Winery cask.
So that's actually what provoked my interest, was the Bourbon Cream, amongst other products. I've seen your whiskeys with the OU prominently displayed on the label, which already stands out amongst the crowd, especially for consumers who, kosher concerned consumers who may not know much about whiskey and don't really know, but seeing that OU there it's a very easy, decision to make. They're like, okay, I know it's kosher, or even if it's just a gift, they'll bring it to someone who cares a lot about kosher. When someone shared the Bourbon Cream with me, and to see the OUD there very clearly, because I see a milk-based product out there in spirits, a lot of kosher concerned consumers may hem and haw, but to just see it very clearly that's what drove me, my interest in chatting. So how'd that come about? How did all the kosher certification, what's the story behind that? The
story behind that is very simple. We have a distributor out of Queens, New York, Allied Distributing, Shai Simeon, and Shai required that his customer base needed it to be kosher, needed to be certified. That's where that started. It
certainly opens up markets for you. And it's a good marketing piece, and helps with sales.
And it's about the quality of ingredients. So when Rabbi Levy shows up and he inspects, everything that is not in the container that possesses a label, Rabbi Levy questions. So you can anything that's OU certified, you can certainly guarantee the quality of the ingredients.
Wow, that's so awesome. Are all of your products under kosher supervision?
Yes, except for we do a canned cocktail. And the canned cocktail is not.
So, but all of these,
we did ask for the paperwork.
But all of these certainly, which are really fascinating. Hey there, I hope you've been enjoying this episode so far, featuring Josh Quinn, as we've been discussing Boone County. I wanted to give you a sneak peek into next week's episode, featuring Rebecca Welton, as we discuss a fascinating biblical Peace.
I think that generally the common denominator understanding of drunkenness is very positive and is seen as a blessing and a reward that God provides.
Hope you enjoyed that sneak peek into next week's episode as we discuss Ben Sawyer more. Now back into this episode with Josh Quinn of Boone County. So we were chatting earlier about the 19th century background, the history, the 67 years of operation. So who are these figures up here?
Great question. So the Boone County Distillery existed from 1833 until about 1900.
Yeah.
And like any great story, there's a cast of characters. There's always someone telling or writing the story.
Yeah.
And then it occurs in a place. Yeah. So this whole story occurs in Petersburg, Kentucky, which of course we're in Boone County today. Still in Boone County today. That's where we're at. Yeah. And you have one person by the name of Lewis Loader who kept a diary for 57 years, from 1857 to 1904. Now, Lewis tells a great story. However, we do know that the first person to own the distillery was William Snyder. Yeah. He owns it from 1833 until 1862. And in 1862, he cedes control of the distillery to his son-in-law, Colonel William Appleton.
That's Civil War time.
Civil War time. That's probably why he left the area.
In the 1860s,
yeah. He was probably a Confederate sympathizer, which is why he left. So he gives it to his son-in-law for about 3 years.
That's him?
No, that's his son. That is Snyder's son.
Okay.
We don't have a picture of Colonel Appleton, unfortunately. I don't know that there's one that exists. So then the third set of owners, they sell it off to two guys by the name of Jenkins and Gaff.
That's in 1865?
About 1864, 65.
The end of the Civil War.
Yeah, right. And those two guys were abolitionists, which were great.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right? So they own it from 1864 or 5 all the way till about 1874. Now, in 1874, the distillery is purchased by two gentlemen, Levi Workham and Julius Freiberg. The two gentlemen you see up here on the right. And I do believe they're both buried in Cincinnati in the Price Hill Cemetery, the Jewish cemetery up there. So they owned it from 1874 until about 1900, until they sold off to a whiskey conglomerate in Peoria, Illinois. Now, a fun fact about these guys is that they were very big fish in a very big whiskey pond. And they made more whiskey than any distillery in the Commonwealth of Kentucky under their ownership.
Really?
Yeah.
So for that last quarter of the 19th century, they made the most whiskey, more whiskey than anybody else in Kentucky.
Correct.
Wow. So that's not insignificant.
No. And they were based out of Cincinnati, and there's a great history in Cincinnati about that.
Yeah, oh, it's amazing. So this is your still.
Yeah.
Your only still here at Boone County. So one of the things I've seen on your bottle, your packaging, it advertises the pot still.
Correct.
Although you were sharing with me moments ago, you've switched branding.
Yes.
You switched away from the pot still. So what? So how did that be? So that had been for when? Up until this year?
Yeah, we just switched away from the branding. So we have a 500-gallon Vendome Brass and Copper Works copper pot still made by the world's premier still maker in Louisville, Kentucky, Vendome Brass and Copper.
Wow.
So this is the real deal.
Yeah.
If you're in the whiskey business, if you're not using Vendome, it's the equivalent of not using the real McCoy, right? So that's the real thing. And it makes a delicious, flavorful whiskey.
Yeah.
However, when we released our pot still product, which we're very proud of, that we made, we waited patiently for 6 years for it to come of age.
Yeah.
And we released it under the name of Boone County Bourbon Pot Still.
Yeah.
However, what we found out was that people, consumers are funny.
Yeah.
And human beings, this is not a rule of human behavior. It is a fundamental law. We are all built to find reasons not to like things.
Okay.
So when people see pot still, they don't know what it is and they don't like it. So when we see things that we don't understand or don't know, or our brain can't process the flavors, some people are just inclined not to try it or say I don't like it. So we heard that a few times in our personal lives, our professional lives, and it's great whiskey, it's wonderful whiskey, and it was unfortunate that people were associating a pot still with not good whiskey. So we changed the branding to something called Founder's Reserve.
Yeah.
Now, what is Founder's Reserve? It's the same great whiskey that we've always been making.
Yeah.
It just removes that bias in your brain of what you think it is.
How recently did that branding change?
It changed 2 months ago.
Oh, wow.
Very recent.
Okay.
Now, we knew we were going to do it about a year ago.
Yeah, but officially to make the transition.
Yeah.
So we're in your rick house. We're in the Boone County rick house, and we can see that some barrels are marked very clearly on the side as being Boone County in a horizontal fashion, and these are not similarly branded, but vertically. So they're different, right?
Correct,
they're sourced differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the sourcing. So the barrels that we see here that are vertically stacked on the pallets with the steel bands around them, and then notable by the 4x4-inch sticker, these come from Lawrenceburg, Indiana at the MGP facility.
Yeah.
Now this particular barrel that we're looking at is something that all of your listeners out here would want, because this happens to be a 2015 barrel, which, let's do the math real quick, 8 years old?
Yeah.
So that's an 8-year-old barrel of whiskey, and it's 21% rye bourbon. This one, if I had it in the retail shop selling, probably a minimum of probably $100.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be really delicious whiskey.
Yeah. So that's that's 8 years ago. That's the same year you started producing products.
Correct.
So how long did you start using the Indiana source grains, and then when did you transition to producing stuff off your own still that we just saw?
That's a great question. So the whiskey business is a funny thing.
Yeah.
It's, if I had a crystal ball to tell you what my production needed to look like this year, so we make about 400 barrels a year, but I don't know if I'm going to sell 400 in 6 years. That's a long way off. So I don't have a crystal ball to look at that.
Yeah.
So what we do to plan for that, we have two different lines. We have a small batch bourbon line, which is this product.
Yeah.
It's always under the small batch. And you'll note it on the label, it doesn't say Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, it just says bourbon whiskey. And then on the back of it, it clearly says distilled in Indiana. If it is made at the Boone County facility, if we made it here, it says Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. And then very clearly on the back, it says that it was made in Boone County, Kentucky, and distilled.
So, okay. But if people did want the MGP products you're making, they should not look for the Kentucky straight label.
Right, that's correct. Well, the MGP ones, if it's a single barrel one, we haven't sold a single barrel MGP in a long time.
Oh, really?
And we're just continuing to allow it to age. Now, we still buy from MGP because there's always a market for that. It's not our number one driver, but for the single barrels, if you can allow these things to get some age on them, they just become highly desirable.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So how long did you go with buying? Like, when did you? I guess once you started production 8 years ago, started distilling 8 years ago. Then you started making your own juice.
Yes.
Yeah.
We started making our own juice on October 3rd, 2015. So it's been a solid 8 years. We still buy from time to time. We still buy from Indiana from time to time, depending on whatever the need is.
Yeah.
But we do make whiskey at this facility that we're in every day, and about 400 barrels a year, which. I think we can see it on the screen. The Boone County barrels, if it says Boone County, we made it. And they're all horizontally stacked on these racks.
When did you start producing bottles to hit shelves? When did those start getting out there?
With the MGP product or the Boone County distillate?
Any of your products?
October 2015, because we had sourced 500 barrels of whiskey initially. People wanted a matured product. So we had 7-year-old whiskey for sale immediately. And well, actually, I take that back. We bought that whiskey in 2012. So I think that was 10 years old when we started selling it initially.
Wow.
So that hit the shelves immediately, and it was only $59.99. It was a pretty cheap product.
You talk about crystal ball stuff. If we could buy stuff from 5-10 years ago, I mean, that's the crazy thing about bourbon these days. Everything's skyrocketed. Well, demand is up.
The thing about the bourbon business, look, I'm just a normal guy, and I've gotten really fortunate with my business partner and to be part of this. And I would tell you this: how did a Jewish guy from Beth Israel Synagogue in Hamilton, Ohio, from those humble beginnings, that became a cop for 27 years, and how did I get here? There's one answer. I was good to people.
Oh, wow.
My business partner, the reason I met him, it was 1997, and I just simply went up to say thank you for something. That was it.
Really? Yeah.
Thank you. And it struck a conversation, and that relationship 30 years later, he's my best friend, he's my business partner, and it's been a pretty good ride.
Wow. That's amazing.
All from saying thank you and being good to people.
So did you transition, speaking of your background, did you transition straight from FBI into this, or how did that transition go?
Oh, good question. No, it was simultaneous.
Okay.
So whenever you're in public service, you always know there's an exit date. It's like running a marathon.
Yeah.
My marathon was 27 years.
Whew.
So I knew I had to make it to 27, and that was the finish line. And I always prepared for what was next. And I did it from day one of my career pretty much.
That's amazing.
I always had the finish line in mind, and what was I going to do what was life going to look like afterwards. And so I've always kept my mind open for opportunities. And people that know me, I don't ever say no to anything because it doesn't cost anything to talk.
That's great. That's great. All right, so we've been talking about barrels, and we're going to transition to talking about another fascinating special barrel project. Hey there, I wanted to break in yet again. Although I asked for support in financial ways because it does cost some money to make the hosting happen and other aspects of Jewish drinking happen. So your financial support is definitely appreciated. And don't forget, you can go to jewishdrinking.com/donate. But also, another way of supporting the show and everything that Jewish Drinking does is also to tell your friends, tell your neighbors. If you like this content, if you like this show, maybe people you know also like it. So feel free to let them know, hey, I have this interesting episode I heard, or a few episodes, or whatever it is, or even a few clips. Feel free to share with your friends. All right, thank you so much. Now back into the show. We're here in this is the Visitor Center, right?
Correct.
Visitor Center with an array of Boone County products, but one that really provoked my fascination was this one aged in Dalton wine casks.
Yes.
So that is not typical. I don't know that there are many Kentucky or really any American distilleries putting their products in Israeli wine casks. So how did that come about?
So that came about from a distributor that we have in Queens, New York, with Allied Distributing, named Shai Gersamian. Mm-hmm. And Shai basically said, my clients, Jewish clients, they won't take anything that's not certified by the Orthodox Union, but they want something really special. Yeah. Like as an example, for a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, they want a 13-year-old single barrel. The number's significant. Special things like that. Yeah. So in this product, he said, I have a line at the Dalton Winery in the Galilee region of Israel. And if I can get the barrel shipped here and all the rabbis can agree on it, to get the barrel here safely, sealed in one country by a rabbi, shipped over here, and before we can do anything with it, it has to be inspected by Rabbi Yosef Levy from the Orthodox Union to ensure that there's been no tampering with it.
So he made the connection. He made the shift.
Yes. Oh, wow. Shai made the connection.
Oh, wow. That's really awesome. Yeah, that's very, I know of Boondocks, and they're probably the only other Kentucky-based distillery putting, kosher-certified in a wine barrel. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
And so how often do you, it's certainly fascinating. I had access to it about a year ago, and it's a really nice product. How often do you, is it much of a big seller? It seems more of a novelty, but...
it's for a particular sort of clientele. Yeah. So any sort of a barrel finished product, a bourbon, always sells very well. Oh. Customers are very curious whether we have whether it's an Amburana cask finish, it's a toasted cask finish, or whether it's a Dalton wine cask finish. Oh. All cask finishes are popular.
Oh, wow. Speaking of which, so you mentioned that, so the Amburana, maybe this was the really fascinating smell I picked up in the Rickhouse. Yeah. So how have these been doing? You mentioned that they do a very different level of sales. Mm-hmm. Toasted Oak, Amburana, the Dalton. How I don't know, what have people been saying about them?
So if I had to tell you from the ground level what we see here, the toasted cask finish is the most popular seller. Yeah. And then we have a maple cask finish, which I don't have in the lineup to show you at the moment. That sells probably second. And this is what we have available today.
Is it more of a caramel? Like what, is it sweeter?
Cask? Yeah, so when you take the 6-year-old bourbon, you empty it from its original charred New American Oak barrel, and then you fill it into a toasted New American Oak barrel. Mm-hmm. And it provides much sweeter flavors. Yeah. So it's a much sweeter product. Yeah. It's really delicious. That's my favorite out of the barrel.
Oh, really?
And then the Amburana, if you're looking for something really unique.
Yeah. It's not as the straight up vanilla-y. It's a different, different character.
It kind of reminds you of, it's like an allspice flavor. Baking spices, allspices.
I wonder if that does well this time of year.
It does. It's a pungent smell. It's delicious, but it's different. Yeah. And I think when you have a glass of whiskey like that, you have to open your mind up that you are purchasing something. It's a unique experience that not everybody does. And the Brazilian barrels, by the way, the craftsmanship, they're beautiful barrels. Wow. They really are beautiful.
All right. Great to hear about their cooperages down there. Yeah. It is funny because I didn't even recognize this, but this is the new branding, the Reserve, the Founders Reserve. How'd you come up with the name Founders Reserve?
Easy. So from a marketing standpoint, these are really, it's just the coal guy and the cop, right? The bourbon guys these days. Trying to figure out how to remove bias from your brain with the word pot still. So Founders Reserve we're proud of it. We put our names on every bottle. Yeah. We sign the back of every bottle. Our names are stamped on it. Oh, wow. And it is Founders Reserve because we were here from day one. We believe in the product and Founders Reserve.
Wow, that's very neat.
It's our stamp of approval.
Yeah. And how's this, the rye? This is 100% rye, right?
Yeah. So this product is a single barrel rye. Yeah. This particular one, on all of our single barrels, it's 6 years old.
Yeah.
And it is marked on the side. It's handwritten. This one is 125.4 proof.
Oof.
And it is 95% rye, 5% malted rye. And it is I love rye whiskeys. Yeah. This is my favorite rye whiskey on planet Earth.
Wow.
And we're lucky that it's ours.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a dynamite rye.
Yeah.
Wow, cool. How have you heard anything about the Dalton? Like, what are people saying? I don't know what else to ask about it.
Yeah, so the Dalton Winery, so it's an 8-year-old bourbon.
Yeah.
It is in a barrel, a French oak barrel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is made. The wine was made with Muscat grapes.
Mm-hmm.
So I would tell you, if I had to give you a flavor profile, it almost tastes like bourbon with a slightly. It doesn't have a wine taste to it, more like a raisin taste to it.
Okay.
So think of the darker fruits.
Yeah.
So on the scale of dried fruit,
yeah.
if you go from apricots to dates, raisins,
mm-hmm.
this is not on the apricot scale. It's on the. Here we are. It's not on the apricot scale. Yeah. It's more towards dates and raisins.
Hey there, I wanted to break in. I hope you're enjoying the episodes so far. Actually, I hope you're enjoying all of the episodes, or at the very least, most of them. And if you haven't, and if this is your first episode, go check more of them out. But if you have been enjoying them, and if you enjoy the other resources that are shared at jewishdrinking.com, I hope you think about the opportunity of supporting the work that we do here and continue to do. Please feel free to visit jewishdrinking.com/donate, and you can help support the work and continue our mission and our vision of bringing l'chaims to life. Thank you so much, and now back into the show. Josh, you shared with us earlier, bourbon cream is the heads and shoulders the biggest selling, most popular product of yours. We're here in front of the blend. So obviously, it start off with a bourbon, and you add some sort of dairy product, right? Cream, milk, something.
We add cream sourced from upstate New York.
Oh wow! Okay, very neat.
And the cool thing about it is it's engineered in such a way that it does not have to be refrigerated.
Really?
Right? How crazy is that?
That's amazing. That's amazing. So how did you come up with bourbon cream, and how did it just blow out? Like, did you know that it would be such a popular product?
No, this was my business partner's idea.
Yeah.
And my business partner enjoyed bourbon cream.
Yeah.
I was skeptical of it at first, but he proved me wrong for sure.
Yeah. No, it's a very dangerous product. It's very delicious. Yeah.
And it's great because if people that come in for the tastings, if you don't like whiskey, there's always something for them, and it's always the bourbon cream.
Oh,
it's the great.
It's unifier, right?
Yeah, the unifier.
Yeah. Oh wow, that is so interesting. You're right. You don't like the straight up sting of a spirit. Yeah, this is cut.
This is perfect.
Yeah.
And this is it's called Whitehall Tavern.
Yeah.
And you can see a picture of a house on it.
Yeah.
Whitehall Tavern was a home that Louis Loader, that I mentioned earlier, he was a person that kept the diary for 57 years, and that structure still exists in Boone County, Kentucky, and it's a bed and breakfast now. As we're wrapping up, we have Josh here. And Josh, thank you so much for your time. This has been really fascinating. I've been enjoying the smell, seeing the sights, but enjoying the smells, which are not going to come across to the camera. But while we're finishing up, is there anything you would like to promote? Well, Rabbi, I'd like to thank you and your listeners for having me on the podcast. It's been fantastic. Absolutely. Thank you. I would just like to tell your audience, the Boone County Distilling Company, we offer tours. And you can find us at boonedistilling.com. We offer tours Tuesday through Saturday. We offer them several times a day. You'll just have to go online and look and see what time suits you. We offer Tuesday through Saturday and also Sundays. And if you're looking for something to do in the Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area, I would encourage you to visit thebeeline.com to visit a variety of restaurants, bars, distilleries in the area. It's a wonderful experience. We're also on the Kentucky Craft Bourbon Trail. Lots of great places to visit in Kentucky. And we're located at exit 178, the Mount Zion Road exit, about 14 miles south of Cincinnati. Awesome. Josh, thank you so much, and l'chaim. L'chaim.